Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today's Monument Live. Very excited to have a new guest joining to talk about her business. Before we get to that and introductions on Elizabeth, my name is Dan Erstad. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Monument. Monument is a platform that helps people change their relationship with alcohol through a combination of therapy, medication management, and also community-based peer support. And in this forum with Monument Live, we look to bring different voices into the conversation to help destigmatize this conversation about unhealthy alcohol use. Our guest today is Elizabeth Gascoigne. Elizabeth is the founder and CEO of Absence of Proof, a non-alcoholic event curation company and online bottle boutique. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So we're going to jump right in. I think that the arena that you're playing in as an entrepreneur and innovator is really important because it's a space that has changed really dramatically in the past couple of years. But before we get to Absence of Proof and that, I'd love to start talking about your early work experiences when it comes to work and alcohol, because a big theme of today's conversation is the fact that alcohol and work are inextricably linked. They're very much intertwined in the culture of how we work. But maybe you could talk a little bit about your background and those first experiences where you bumped into alcohol and work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the very first experience that I can think of is in my early days, I was a sales assistant at a company in LA. And I was not 21 yet. So I was 20. That was my first job. And I was very left out of like the social opportunities at work because I couldn't go to the bars. So I remember that being like a very clear moment of being like, okay, alcohol seems important in order to like make friends at work. And so that really stood out to me, but it wasn't like something I ever had to say no to because I wasn't 21. So it was very easy to be like, oh, I simply can't go. I think where the kind of navigating that got more complicated is when I was in my early 20s and I decided to stop drinking. I was still in advertising sales, but this time I was an account executive, so I was more client facing. And when you're in sales, you obviously want your clients to like you. You want to be fun and entertaining, and you're just doing a lot of happy hours and things like that. And so when I decided to remove alcohol, now it became a conversation of, oh, it's not that you can't drink, it's that you're not drinking for a specific reason. And why is that reason? And so I just really started noticing that at work happy hours, it was becoming a conversation, and there was never any malicious intent from the questions. And I think that's really important to note. People are genuinely curious, but it does all of a sudden make you other from everyone else, which in a work situation or a client situation is not always ideal. So that was really kind of like the catalyst for creating my current company, which is, making sure that every place that you go to socialize has inclusive, complex, non-alcoholic options so that you never feel like an other.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that example you share about your first job when you were actually underage, it is so true that, from our early work experiences, whether it's interning during college or even before then, the idea of alcohol and work is introduced, early on, right? This notion, this idea that, bonding happens over alcohol. So I think it makes it all the more powerful, what you're doing and looking to take that on. So now that you've shared a little bit of your background, tell us more about Absence of Proof. Tell us more about the business, what you're doing with it and, what the vision is with the company.
Yeah, so Absence of Proof actually started as a side hustle when I was still working at advertising sales. And again, it was really just to create intentional social experiences without alcohol. So I was throwing parties, nights and weekends, really anywhere from like a club night out with no drinking to, a breathwork party on the weekends, really any sort of social event that you can think of, we tried to throw it. And then from there, I really decided that this was like my passion and kind of like what I was meant to do. And so we were thinking of other ways to scale that. And one of the ways that we came across was this gap in corporate events and happy hours, and how, every corporate event seemed to have a lot of alcohol at it, which is fine for some people, but for other people who may be in recovery or even just trying to drink less, it might not be a great fit. And so we started hosting events at corporate offices and for Dry January, Sober October, et cetera. And then folks started realizing like, it doesn't have to be one of these pillar months in the sober space. We should have mocktail options or non-alcoholic cocktail options at every happy hour that we host. And so that's kind of sustained that side of the business for year round and not just those months. But that really was a big part for us. And then from there, I really got inspired because, you know, when you're in the workplace, sometimes happy hours are at the office. A lot of times it's let's go grab a drink at this bar after work. And so kind of the other part of our business is helping bars and restaurants bring in more inclusive options and help them understand how to have non-alcoholic options on the menu, that it isn't just, you know, a juice or a lemonade. So we kind of try to hit, again, anywhere that you would go to socialize, we want to make sure there's great options.
It's really great. And, you know, it's so timely. We're having this conversation now as we're entering the summer season. And obviously a lot of companies have, you know, put on the date, you know, a gathering, an event, a party that, you know, frankly, I think, you know, employees really look forward to. And it's an opportunity to get together with friends, colleagues. But I think this approach to those settings and making them more inclusive and more mindful of those who don't drink, whether they're in recovery or for a variety of reasons, as you said, it's so vital. It's really, really important. So in terms of the market, and this is an area I think where you have a lot of expertise. You know, we've written a lot about the non-alcoholic beverage space and innovation there, but I think you have a really good sense of, you know, what is happening there and kind of giving an overview. So could you talk a little bit more about that and, you know, what's happening in that space today?
Yeah, you know, I learn something new every day about the space and kind of what vocabulary we should be using and shouldn't be using and all of that. I think the biggest thing is one, to understand where you're at personally in terms of the sobriety spectrum. You know, there's sobriety, people who are sober, who are in recovery, meaning they might have struggled with, you know, an unhealthy relationship with alcohol or something like that. There's folks who are sober curious, which means maybe they're interested in exploring a more mindful drinking lifestyle, drinking less, maybe not drinking at all, but they don't identify as being in recovery. And then there's, you know, drinkers or mindful drinkers or things like that. So I think when you start to look at the non-alcoholic space and think what types of beverages are right for me, you want to be really clear on kind of where you fall so that you don't accidentally trigger yourself, you know, have a cocktail that reminds you of a negative experience or something like that. So you just want to be really like really just like be in touch with yourself and honest with yourself. And then from there, let's say you figure out that like, hey, I'm totally comfortable with drinking non-alcoholic beer. I don't mind that it tastes like beer. Okay, great. There's a couple of things that you want to be conscious of. One is that non-alcoholic in the US, that term legally means that it is below 0.5% ABV, meaning that there is still a very, very small amount of alcohol. Now, if we put this in perspective, it's about the same amount of alcohol as like a kombucha, a banana, you know, something like this. You're never going to get intoxicated from it. However, if you are sober for religious reasons, you know, a lot of folks who are sober for religious reasons want something that has never, ever touched alcohol, or you are in recovery. A lot of times those folks will also want something that has never touched alcohol. So if something says non-alcoholic, you just want to make sure you're kind of zooming in on that label, understanding that this might not be completely alcohol-free. Alcohol-free legally means that there is no alcohol, which is great for folks who, you know, just want 0.0 ABV. There's a lot of mocktails on the market that are 0.0 ABV. And I also think that one kind of way to identify that is a mocktail typically is going to have no alcohol or no non-alcoholic spirits in it. A non-alcoholic cocktail may have some of those non-alcoholic spirits that mimic the taste of alcohol. So again, you just want to make sure you're kind of proceeding with caution. And yeah, if you're worried about it, just kind of steer clear. There's so many amazing options on the market that have never touched alcohol. So for me, it's always better safe than sorry.
That was really great. And it's something that has come up, you know, some of the themes that you talked about. So, I mean, one being, you know, ensuring that if an individual is in recovery, you know, making sure that, you know, that taste of beer, even if it's a non-alcoholic beer, is not triggering or not challenging for that individual. And it's something, you know, we hear feedback from our members, but also from, you know, whether it's entrepreneurs or clinicians, others that we're engaging with, just to be really mindful of that. So that was great that you called some of those things out. So tell us more about with the business today, how you're engaging with companies. So like, what do those engagements actually look like? And maybe you could share some anecdotes of what it's like to partner with, you know, other, you know, with companies with absence of proof.
Yeah, you know, it looks a little bit different for everyone. You know, I would say the main three types of ways that we work with corporations is one, cocktail making classes. Those are really fun, hands-on interactive. So we'll actually come into the office, we'll bring all the shakers and the jiggers and everything you need, and we'll teach folks how to create really great non-alcoholic cocktails. Typically with those, we have a cocktail making competition at the end, which is really fun to see, like all the employees get really into it. It's a fun way to break up the day. The other thing is just catering a happy hour that already exists. So we've done some things with corporations where they're already hosting an event and they want to make sure they're being inclusive. So they bring us in and we set up a bar next to the regular bar, and that's great too. And then lastly, not catering, but I guess supplying cafeterias. So, a lot of work happy hours, you might go, especially the bigger corporations, you might go to the cafeteria and grab a beer. We want to make sure that when you go to grab a beer, next to it is also a non-alcoholic beer. We want to make sure that that's available even when we are not physically present to cater events. So those are kind of the three ways that we work. And it's been really, really fun. Dry January is definitely I think we had over 30 events or something last Dry January. It was crazy.
No, that's awesome. I think that's great that you found different ways to work with employers that can either be something novel and dedicated, or to fit into existing programming and events that they already have on the calendar. That's really great. So, I think this has been awesome just to get, again, an overview of your background, what you're doing with the company and how you're working with employers. But as we close out, I don't know if there's any final things you want to share, any plugs about the business, and what's the best way to get in touch.
Yeah, email Elizabeth@absenceofproof is the best way to get in touch. If you're interested in coming to any of our public events, we host those all around the country. So we post those on our Instagram. And yeah, if you work for a company and want to have some mocktails, obviously send me an email and we'll be excited to work with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then just a final few notes about Monument. If you are watching this, there's a few different ways you can join our platform. The main way is individuals can come and sign up and see the different options that Monument offers, whether it's clinical treatment or community-based peer support. If you are a prospective partner, an employer, we work with many leading employers across different sectors, healthcare, tech, professional services, and so on. You can reach out to me, Dan at joinmonument.com, or to partnerships at joinmonument.com. And we are working on some collaboration with Elizabeth. So you could also reach out to our team and find ways we can plug things together, potential engagements. But with that, again, really appreciate the time today, and I love learning about new businesses, new models, which I think are all in the spirit of inclusivity, creating a better environment for us to have a better relationship with alcohol. I think that's what we're after, all of us. So thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. Thanks, Elizabeth. Take care.